chapter number Obadiah. It's only got one chapter. So we'll start verse 1. I keep writing down in my notes, write chapter, you write chapter and verse, and I keep writing down only one verse, only one chapter. So there are 21 verses, so you've got that to look forward to. Book of Obadiah. Obadiah, there are a number of Obadiahs in the Bible. I said to you before, the name means the servant of Jehovah, the servant of the Lord. And this particular Obadiah is a contemporary of Jeremiah. And you know that as we get into the text here, you'll see how it compares, it echoes actually the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah was a major prophet in Israel, major writing prophet. And there are many things that Jeremiah said and that he wrote that gets echoed in other prophets and in other places. And there's one issue that Jeremiah laid out about Edom that God takes out of Jeremiah and puts in one book all by itself. That's the book of Obadiah, because it's such it's important enough to dedicate a whole book to it. And that's the destruction of Edom. And we talked last time about the ancient hatred, the old hatred that started back with Ishmael and comes all the way through, a perpetual hatred, Ezekiel calls it, and Amos calls it, that the Edomites, as we go through here, you'll see why the Edomites are such a important part in that. But they are the spearhead in the last days of this ancient hatred that goes all the way back to the time of Ishmael. And sin complicates life. I was talking to somebody the other day we were talking about marriage. I said, if it hadn't been for the first marriage, for Adam and Eve, you wouldn't know anything about marriage. And if it hadn't been for Adam and Eve, there wouldn't be any problems in marriage, because marriage problems come because we're sinners. And if Adam hadn't sinned, well, then you wouldn't have a problem. But he did, and we do. And sin complicates things. And when Abraham sinned with Ishmael, then that complicated things. We studied all about that. And I want you to understand that what happens in the last days is a bringing to a conclusion of a hatred that goes all through history. And we see it today. In our world, and we'll see a verse in a few minutes about Israel being called a nation not desired, and that's certainly the way they are during the fifth course of judgment, the captivity. Verse number 1, the vision of Obadiah. Thus saith the Lord concerning Edom. So the book's going to be about just this one particular nation, but there's going to be a lot of other people involved with them. We have heard the rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Now, you got a vision of Obadiah, and then he says, we have heard. You see how that he didn't say I heard, he said we heard. That's the plural is because it's the prophets that heard this. The prophets have gotten a rumor. They've gotten this message from the Lord, and it's about this rumor that's going on about these people that want to rise up against the nation Israel. And so the idea there is that this is more than one prophet's got this. Obadiah is going to write a book about it, but he's not the only one that has the information about it. When he says, we have heard a rumor from the Lord, an ambassador is sent among the heathen. If you come down to verse number 7, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. There's a whole lot of other people involved in what's going on here. And I just want you to see that. When he says an ambassador is sent among the heathen, this is going to be not just any heathen. It's going to be the heathen that Edom is associated with. Edom has formed a conspiracy. There is a confederacy of some nations that border the nation Israel. Verse 7, when he says, all thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The border is going to be the border of the nation Israel. And these nations that are bordering around Israel, they're using Edom, and there's a confederacy associated with them. And what Obadiah is going to do is he's going to let Israel know God's response to this call from the nations, from this conspiracy. They call up, they want to battle against Israel. Here's Israel, all the nations surrounded around them want to battle them. And when they do that, God says, I want to send you a message. I know what's going on. Now, if you look down at verse 14. Neither shalt thou have stood in the crossway. He's talking to the Edomites. Neither shouldest thou have stood in the crossway to cut off those of his that did escape. Neither shouldest thou have delivered up those of his that did remain in the day of distress. For the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. You shouldn't have persecuted Israel, because them that curse thee, I'm going to curse. So as you did to them, it's going to be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thy own head. You're in a situation, prophetically, where Israel is again God's nation in the earth, his client nation. The Abrahamic covenant is again in effect. Them that bless thee, I'll bless. Them that curse thee, I'll curse. So because of the curse that Edom has placed on Israel, he said, I'm going to punish you and destroy you. Verse 16, for as ye have drunk upon my holy mountain, so shall all the heathen drink continually. Yea, they shall drink, and they shall swallow down. They shall be as though they had not been. But upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance, and there shall be holiness, and the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble. And they shall kindle in them, they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for the Lord hath spoken it. Now you notice in verse 18, he's saying that Israel, the house of Esau is going to be like stubble, the house of Israel is going to be like a fire, and the house of Israel is going to go into that house of Esau and is going to kindle them and devour them. It's going to be Israel is going to burn against Esau and destroy Esau. Now, there are two situations. Come back with me, if you will, to the book of Ezekiel. In the destruction of Edom, there are two methods whereby Edom is going to be destroyed. And as I've studied this thing, it's to me it's kind of obvious that they don't take place at the same time. One is Israel is going to destroy Edom, because Edom sought to destroy Israel. He's going to then destroy Edom with Israel. And then you have all the passages like Isaiah 34 and Isaiah 63 and so forth, where the Lord himself is doing it. And there's something of a difference. Ezekiel chapter 25, here's another one of these passages about the judgment on Edom. Thus said, and there must be at least, and I hadn't counted them, I've got a list of, there must be at least 15 or 20. I should have counted them, I didn't. Passages about the destruction of Edom in Jeremiah and Ezekiel and in the prophets. And it's fascinating when you read through them. And they categorize themselves literally in two different categories. One is like this passage here. Ezekiel 25:12. Thus saith the Lord God, behold, because that Edom hath dealt against the house of Israel by taking vengeance, and hath greatly offended and revenged himself upon them. Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, I will also stretch out mine hand upon Edom, and will cut off man and beast from it, and I will make it desolate from Teman, and they of Dedan shall fall by the sword. Now that's, I told you Edom is that territory that's east of the Dead Sea and south there. Dedan is down in Saudi Arabia. And I will lay my vengeance upon Edom, now watch, by the hand of my people Israel. And they shall do in Edom according to mine anger, and according to my fury, and they shall know my vengeance, saith the Lord God. So one of the ways God's going to destroy Edom is he's going to use the nation Israel to do so. Come with me to Ezekiel chapter 35. Make it 37. In Ezekiel 37, you have the vision of the valley of dry bones. When God brings you, and it's a picture of the restoration of Israel back out of the nations. They've been scattered among the nations of the earth during the captivity. Now he's going to bring them back into their land and resurrect them as a nation, restore them as a nation in the earth. When he does that, and you'll notice in Ezekiel 37, verse 11, Thus he said unto me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, I say, our bones are dried, and our hope is lost, and we're cut off from our parts. Therefore prophesy and say unto them, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, O my people, I will open your graves and cause you to come out of your graves and bring you into the land of Israel. And you shall know that I am the Lord, when I have opened your graves, O my people, and brought you up out of your graves. And I will put my spirit in you, and you shall live, and I will place you in your own land. Then shall you know that I, the Lord, have spoken it and performed it, saith the Lord. So who is the valley of dry bones? Well, verse 11, the bones are the whole house of Israel. And what you're seeing in the putting them back together and them standing up and putting breath in them is the restoration of the nation Israel back into their land and then eventually into their kingdom, putting his spirit in them. By the way, verse 11 is very important because it tells you who it is. Commentaries and preachers tell you that the valley of dry bones is us. And it's a picture getting saved, that kind of stuff. But the verse tells you it's the house of Israel. This is prophecy, and you understand that. Now, I just want you to notice verse 10. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived. So the nation is restored and brought back to life, and stood upon their feet an exceeding great army. So when Israel is restored back into the land as a nation, she's restored into the land and is identified as an exceeding great army. In other words, she is a military force who has taken possession of that land. So when you're reading in chapter 25 about, verse 14, I will lay vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel, you're literally reading about this exceeding great army that the nation Israel has had that God then is going to empower. It's going to be my fury, mine anger, my vengeance, but it's going to use the nation to do it. And he's going to do it with them that curse thee, I'll curse, kind of a thing. So the issue coming up here with Edom is that God first, and this is what Obadiah is basically about, is that God is going to destroy the Edomites by this exceeding great army. Now, today we call it the Israeli Defense Force. I don't know what they'll call it then. But he's made the nation an exceeding great army who he's going to use to put vengeance on these Arab nations who have circled around the nation Israel. Now, there are two sets of heathen. They're the heathen that have gathered around Israel. Come with me to Zechariah chapter 12. And when you're studying these prophets, sometimes it can be maddening to try to keep all this stuff straight. in your mind. I don't study with a computer. A lot of my friends, they study with computers and stuff, and I can't get enough information on the screen. Years ago, I built a desk when I lived in Alabama. I went down to the lumber yard and bought a door that had been turned back in. They didn't want, had a hole drilled in it for the handle, and nobody wanted it. And I bought the door. The guy just almost gave it to me just to get rid of it. And I brought it home, and now you got the size of it, and I put legs on it, and then I put a board on the back, the length of it slanted, so that I had a little shelf. And then I would take paper and put on that board, and I would take pieces of, and I'd write verses on it. And then you take a verse, and you got a verse there, and you'd put it over here, and you're trying to put them all together. And I can't do that with a computer screen. So if you watch me study, I have yellow pads, and I've got all these verses written about all that kind of stuff, because I want to try to get it in front of you. And sometimes it gets maddening. The thing that infuriates me the most is I'll write it down on a verse, and then I'll have it 6 pages on top of it, and I can't find it. And I know it's there somewhere. I've got to find it. And my mind doesn't always remember what's on the page. I just remember that it is on the page. So sometimes you got to get all these things together in your mind. Now, when I'm trying to teach, I can't put all those pages on the wall for you. So you have to kind of, when we go through these minor prophets like this, you're looking at a lot of, kind of looking for the needle in the haystack a lot of times, and you have to remember things. And when you come into Obadiah, there's just a couple of basic things, framework kind of things, if you keep in mind. One is that the judgment on Edom is going to take place in 2 parts. One is that God's going to use that exceeding great army to destroy the Arab nations right around Israel. And then he's also going to wipe them out at the second advent itself, when Christ himself comes. We studied in Amos how he comes down the Mediterranean, all through that territory. That's him personally coming. He's not using anybody else. Isaiah 60:63, he says, "Who is this that comes from Edom, dyed garment?" He says, "I alone. I did this. I did that by myself." Previous to that, he had used Israel. So there's 2 phases in it. And sometimes if you get the 2, if you're not careful to notice which one you're talking about, you get them kind of mixed up. It doesn't matter that you got them mixed up unless you're trying to identify the timing involved in it. Okay? And that's when it gets interesting. Zechariah chapter 12. The burden of the word of the Lord for Isaiah, saith the Lord, which stretcheth forth the heavens, and layeth the foundation of the earth, and formeth the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all people round about, when they shall be in the siege, both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. Now, when I read that, I see 2 different groups. Verse number 2, there's all the people round about. That's the people that are right around Israel, their immediate neighbors. And then there's all the people of the earth that send representatives. So you have 2 groups. You have one group that's just the immediate neighbors, and then you have all the people of the earth that are gathered together. And that's what's happening in chapter 14, when all the nations of the earth are gathered together. So, go back to Obadiah. If you can just kind of keep in your mind the idea that what we're primarily going to be studying in Obadiah is God's use of the nation Israel. By the hand of my people Israel, I'm going to punish them. And which means what we're talking about is something prior to the actual second advent itself. So timing-wise, it's going to be something a little earlier. Now, go back to chapter Obadiah verse 1. We have heard a rumor from the Lord. Now, God is giving Israel a message to tell them, I know what's being said about you. I know what's being prophesied, what's being planned against you. And I know what's happening out there. The Israelis are, in the Psalms, they cry, how long, O Lord? You see all this stuff. When are you going to help? And here's the answer. Come with me to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 49. Jeremiah chapter 49 is a parallel passage to what you're going to read in Obadiah. In fact, when you read down through Jeremiah 49, you see that a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it is what is echoed in Obadiah. In fact, there's information in Jeremiah that isn't in Obadiah, and vice versa. But it's important to kind of see that what Obadiah is doing is isolating and consequently making it a focal point in one book of what God had already prophesied in Jeremiah. And by the way, tell you what, Duke, just to make that point, look at Matthew 27. Now let me talk to you a minute about Jeremiah. Matthew chapter 27. Get Matthew 27 in one hand and Zechariah chapter 11. Zechariah chapter 11 and Matthew 27. It's fascinating how important Jeremiah and what he prophesied about the captivity is. You got Matthew 27? Look back, hold on to Matthew 27, look at Matthew 16. I'm sorry, I'm working backwards in my mind here. When you think about Jeremiah, Matthew 16, verse 13. When Jesus came into the coast of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? And they said, some say thou art John the Baptist, some Elias, that's Elijah, others Jeremiah, that's Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. Now, I don't know if you've ever wondered why. I can understand why they said John the Baptist, because he was the prophet that introduced Christ. I can understand why they said Elijah, because John came in the spirit and power of Elijah, and Malachi chapter 4 says that Elijah is going to come before the great and notable day of the Lord. I can understand why I said one of the prophets, Daniel said, Deuteronomy 18, Moses said that God was going to send a prophet like unto me. That's why Moses and Elijah are those two witnesses. But where in the world did Jeremiah come in? And it's fascinating. I've listened to preachers teach that passage for 5 decades, and nobody ever says why Jeremiah is there. And to me, it's one of those things that there's some things about Jeremiah. He fits in to that last day scenario in a very potent kind of a way. Chapter 27, Matthew 27. Matthew 27, verse number 8, or verse number 9. In Matthew 27, Judas has betrayed Christ. He's gotten his 30 pieces of silver. He says, verse number 4, I have sinned in that I have betrayed innocent blood. He casts the 30 pieces of silver, verse 5, back on the temple floor, and he departs and he hangs himself. Verse 6, the chief priests take the pieces of silver and said, it's not lawful for to put them into the treasure because it is the price of blood. Now that's religion for you. We just paid the guy to betray a fellow so we could murder him, but we're too religious to take the money and put it in the church treasury. We took it out of the church treasury to pay the guy to get a guy murdered. But religion does that. It just the disconnect. I read an article today. The Internet's so wonderful; it lets you read so many different things. It's called Legal Graft. And I see legal graft. That's an interesting title. I think what that's about. And it's describing how, if you live in Chicago, you know what the machine is, the political machine. And they said that's legal graft. You do it legally, but you elect somebody and then you donate to their campaigns because you know that they keep, if we scratch your back, you scratch our back, that kind of stuff. But you do it legally. It's graft, it's corruption, but it's not bribery in the formal sense of the word. And they're describing how the new legal graft is done through things like the political foundations and the PACs and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's just the way people are. Excuse, just get done what you want to get. That's what these birds are doing, except they're doing it in religion. Now, verse number 9. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy the prophet, saying, They took 30 pieces of silver, the price of him that was valued, whom they of the children of Israel did value, and gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord appointed me. Now, you see how it says it was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet? That is not found in the book of Jeremiah. If you look back at Zechariah chapter number 11, verse 12 and verse 13 and verse 14, there you'll find it written in Zechariah. And so people say, well, see, Matthew is wrong because he says it's Jeremiah said it, but then you find it written in Zechariah. Well, the difference is, you see what Matthew said, he didn't say it was written in Jeremiah, he said it was spoken by Jeremiah. See that? Jeremiah spoke it, Zechariah wrote it down. You follow that? Now look at Zechariah chapter 7, because he has already alerted you that he's going to do that kind of stuff. Zechariah chapter 7, verse 7. Should you not hear the words which the Lord hath cried by the former prophets, when Jerusalem was inhabited and in prosperity, and the city thereof round about her, when men inhabited the south and the plains? That's, you see the words cried by the former prophets when the city was inhabited? That's Jeremiah was one of those prophets. So Zechariah, who is after the captivity, that Israel's going back to the land, taking the remnant back, he said, we remember what the prophets before the captivity said. And one of the major prophets before the captivity was Jeremiah. So something that Jeremiah spoke, Zechariah writes it down. But that's not a shock in the Bible. So when you go back over to Jeremiah chapter 49, it isn't a shock that Jeremiah 49 is going to have a lot of information that you're going to find when you get into the book of Obadiah. This is widely, just like the quote from Jeremiah was widely known and finally recorded by Zechariah. But obviously everybody knew Jeremiah had said it too. The information in Jeremiah 49 is widely known. God's going to isolate it apart in one book because it just doesn't need to be in the midst of. If you look at Jeremiah chapter 40, first chapter 46. The words of Jeremiah the words of the Lord which came to Jeremiah the prophet against the Gentiles. Jeremiah is going to start giving a message from God against the Gentiles that are gathered against the nation Israel. Chapter 2, verse 1, 46, verse 2, against Egypt. If you come down to chapter 47, the word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah the prophet against the Philistines. before that Pharaoh smote Gaza. Chapter 48, verse 1, against Moab. Chapter 49, concerning the Ammonites. Chapter 49, verse 7, concerning Edom. Chapter 49, verse 23, concerning Damascus. Verse number 34, the word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah the prophet against Elam. Chapter 50, Babylon. So he's given a message about a bunch of different Gentile nations. Okay? God takes one of them out and says, this one about Edom, I want to talk to you about that a little more. So he takes out of the list that Jeremiah gives and makes one book out of it because of the critical importance of that particular issue. Okay, and as we get on into the thing in a minute, you'll begin to see why Edom is such a important figurehead for these other Gentiles. Jeremiah 49, verse 7, concerning Edom. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, is wisdom no more in Teman? Is counsel perished from the prudent? Is their wisdom vanished? And that's a mockery. The answer there is yes, it is. And the wisdom and the counsel that should be there is that stuff we talked about last time. They should have understood the value of the Abrahamic covenant, what it meant. Esau understood what the covenant was. He knew what his father's the blessing was. He knew the covenant. He understood his position in it. He understood he was to serve his brother. All the wisdom involved in the Abrahamic covenant is now abandoned. It's not in Edom. When it says that wisdom is no more in Teman, one of the fellows that came to counsel Job was a Temanite. Teman was known for its wisdom, supposedly, and he said, "It's just vanished out of you guys. Flee ye, turn back, dwell deep, O inhabitants of Dedan, for I will bring the calamity of Esau upon him, the time that I will visit him. The grape gatherers come to thee, if grape gatherers come to thee. Would they not leave some gleaning grapes? If these by night they will destroy till they have enough. But I have made Esau bare." Now, if you go back over to Obadiah, if you remember, and if you've read Obadiah by now maybe 5 times, well, this is our 4th study, so 4 times you've read Obadiah, right? Once a week. You recognize that verse immediately. Verse number 5. If these come to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? Will they not have stolen till they had enough? If grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? How are the things of Esau searched out? You see, so Obadiah is echoing the prophecy that Jeremiah gives back here. Jeremiah 49, verse number 10. But I've made Esau bare. I have uncovered his secret places. He shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren and his neighbors, and he is not. Going to put an end to them. And he's going to do it with his neighbors. Now, who are the neighbors? Well, he's in southern Jordan. So you'd be talking about Jordan. You'd be talking about Gaza. You're talking about Egypt. You're talking about Lebanon. You're talking about Syria. You're talking about all those Arab nations there. Leave thy fatherless children. I'll preserve them alive. And let thy widows trust in me. Now there's a verse we're going to come back to, because notice there's a remnant of the Arabs that are going to be left. Now that's a fascinating thing. We're going to see when we get to the end of the book of Obadiah that there literally is a remnant of Palestinians that are left, and that God has a solution for their future. Verse 12, thus saith the Lord, behold, they whose judgment was not to drink of the cup have assuredly drunken, and art thou he that shall altogether go unpunished? Thou shalt not go unpunished, but thou shalt surely drink of it. And I have sworn by myself, saith the Lord, that Bozrah shall become a desolation, a reproach, a waste, and a curse, and all the cities thereof shall be perpetual waste. I have heard a rumor from the Lord. Now we're back in Obadiah. I've heard a rumor from the Lord. Now this is where Obadiah starts. From the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen, saying, gather ye together. Notice he says, I have heard a rumor. Obadiah said, we have heard. That's when I said Obadiah is echoing what Jeremiah is saying. Gather ye together and come against her and rise up to the battle. For lo, I will make thee small among the heathen and despised among men. Thy terribleness hath deceived thee, and the pride of thine heart, O thou that dwellest in the clefts of rocks, of the rocks, hath holdest the height of the hill. Though thou shouldest make thy nest as high as the eagle, I will bring thee down from thence, saith the Lord. And also Edom shall be a desolation. Every one that goeth by it shall be astonished, and shall hiss at all the plagues thereof. And as in the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighboring cities thereof, saith the Lord, no man shall abide there. Now that's the destruction in Isaiah 34 that takes place at the end of after the Advent. So there's a destruction by Israel that leaves a remnant, and then later on there's the destruction from the Lord that doesn't leave anybody. So the only way I know to reconcile those two things is say they're two different judgments. One takes place at one point, one at another. And you'll notice how he's echoing in Obadiah what Jeremiah said. Now go back with me, Will, to the book of Obadiah, just real quick, because we're going to run out of time. We have heard the rumor from the Lord, an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Now, an ambassador is a governmental official. He's gone out among the heathen, and this is going to be the heathen that are groups that are right around it. And that takes you down to verse 7. All the men of thy confederacy. So there's a confederacy among some nations. And there's an ambassador that's sent among the heathen, and the ambassador is saying, arise ye, let us rise up against her, that's Israel, in battle. So the Lord is saying, I know what's going on in the conspiracy out here, in this confederacy against Israel to gather together these nations against her. Now he's going to talk to Edom, because you see what he says in verse 3? The pride of thine heart hath what? Deceived thee. Edom is being deceived in what's going on here. Verse 7. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border, and that's going to be the border of Israel. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee. So who is it who's deceived Edom? The people that they're confederate with, their cohorts. And prevailed against thee. They're literally using Edom as a front to accomplish another purpose. They've convinced Edom that you need to do this, and you ought to do this, and this is what you need to do, and they are using Edom as a front to accomplish another purpose. Now, the purpose is to destroy Israel and to take her land. But they're not just coming up and they're using Edom to do it, and they're deceiving them. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. They have so completely deceived the Edomites. by the pride of their heart. They've used Edom's pride to deceive them. They've used their jealousy over the Abrahamic covenant, the blessings of the Abrahamic covenant. And they've deceived the Edomites into leading in the battle to rise up against Israel to destroy her. Now, the confederacy that he's talking about and the nations involved, come with me to Psalm 83. There's a fascinating thing as we go through these things, how often these Psalms back here show up. In Psalm 83, you're in the third book of the Psalms. The third book of the Psalms runs from Psalm 73 to Psalm 89. And the focus in these Psalms is the Lord avenging his cause against Israel's enemies. That's exactly what Obadiah is talking about in Edom. Thy reward, I'm going to curse you because you've cursed them. I'm going to avenge Israel against you. Psalm 83 says, this is an Israeli in that time period. Keep not thou silent, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. That's why Obadiah starts out by saying, we've heard a rumor from the Lord. Here's God's response to them saying, don't be quiet. Tell us, come do something. Lo, thine enemies make a tumult. They that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. Now, remember that issue of taking crafty counsel against Israel. What did we read? What did we just read about over here in Obadiah just a minute ago? Verse 7, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed. They have used crafty counsel to deceive the Edomites into thinking that they have a right. They use them as the excuse to destroy Israel. They're not just going to walk up and say, we want to just blow Israel off the map. They're going to use the Edomites as their excuse to do it. And they're going to use a lot of real crafty kind of counsel. Come up with me to Daniel chapter 11. Hold on to Psalms. There's a fascinating thing back here in Daniel 11 talking about the Antichrist and about how Satan works in these nations. Daniel 11, verse 27. And both these kings' hearts shall be to do mischief. They shall speak lies at one table, but it shall not prosper. For yet the end shall be at the time appointed. You got one guy sitting here, he's negotiating with this guy sitting over here, and they're just lying through their teeth at each other. They're trying to deceive one another. You hear Donald Trump talking about our negotiators go to negotiate with another country, and they don't know how to negotiate. They get beat. It would be fascinating to watch him negotiate when he negotiates a business deal. If you've ever read his book, The Art of the Deal, you understand how people negotiate things. If you've been in business negotiations, but in politics, it's really screwball. My son David works for the DuPage County Sheriff's Department. And he was describing to me, he goes to board meetings. He's the head of the IT department, so he has to go sit on boards with other county agencies. And he says, well, there'll be an issue, and we all know what the issue is. We all know what the solution to the issue is, but nobody can say it because this politician in this department doesn't like that politician in that department. So the issue is not the issue on the table. It's how do you get all this other stuff done? And no matter what happens, if your guy doesn't like that guy's guy, then we're not going to do it, no matter even if it makes sense. And so he said, wow, all of a sudden there's all this other stuff going on out here. And so you got Satan's around over here, whispers in this guy's ear, then he runs around this side of the table, whispers in this guy's ear, and there's just, the fight goes. Well, they take crafty counsel. But the whole purpose of the counsel, the whole purpose of the deceit is Psalm 83, verse 4. They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel be no more in remembrance. So the purpose is to execute that old, ancient, perpetual hatred to destroy the nation Israel. Verse 12, who say, let us take to ourselves the houses of God in possession. They want to destroy Israel and take her land. So that's what's really behind it. Now, verse number 5. For they have consulted together with one consent. But you got to remember, when they consulted together with one consent, what did Obadiah tell you? They were deceiving Edom to make them the focal point and the excuse. They are confederate against thee. So here's the confederacy. The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagarenes, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with inhabitants of Tyre, Asher, also is joined unto them. They have holpen the children of Lot, Selah. Now there are 10 nations there. All those nations border the nation Israel. They're Arab nations. When you talk about Edom, that's Esau. That's the Palestinians. Ishmael, that's Saudi Arabia. Moab, you're in central Jordan. Hagarenes, Hagar, that's Egyptians. You're talking about those Arab nations right around Israel, that border Israel. They've confederated together. That's what we're reading about in the book of Obadiah. Now, for time's sake, just finish reading the Psalms, because here's what the believing remnant in Israel is asking God to do. Verse 9. Verse 9. Do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin at the brook of Kishon, which perished at Endor. They became as dung for the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb, like Zeb, yea, all their princes as Zebah and Zalmunna. Now, those are historic references, and what these Jews ask God to do, they don't say, Lord, you come back and destroy them. They said, do to them what you did when Gideon fought the Philistines, what Sisera did when he fought the Philistines. And they said, judge them using the historic precedent back in Judges of taking the nation Israel and destroy. How did Gideon destroy the Philistines, the Midianites? The 300. You remember that. The sword of the Lord and Gideon. Israel. How did Sisera do it? Well, the Lord used them. They were the instrument in his hand. And what they're literally asking God to do is use the historic precedent back in Judges of taking Israel, an exceeding great army, and going out and taking vengeance. And what God does before he comes and wipes them out is he gives back to the Edomites exactly what the Edomites gave to Israel. And just as the Edomites chastised Israel, assaulted Israel, as we're reading in Obadiah, he's going to use Israel to do the same thing back to them. Them that curse thee, I'll curse. Then he says in verse 12, who said, this is what they said, let us take to ourselves the houses of God in possession. Notice it says the houses of God. Now that's a dead giveaway that this is not a psalm about something that happened back in the book of Samuel. It's a psalm of Asaph, but there weren't houses of God back then. See, this is something in the future. O my God, make them like a wheel, as the stubble before the wind, as the fire burneth a wood, as the flame setteth the mountains on fire, so persecute them with thy tempest, and make them afraid of thy storm. That's exactly what Obadiah said he's going to do. He's going to make them stubble, make Israel the fire, and burn them. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek thy name, O Lord. Let them be confounded and troubled forever. Yea, let them be put to shame and perish, that men may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, art the most high over all the earth. So let's settle the issue about who the God of the earth is. And Israel's going to destroy the... Listen, the way the Palestinian conflict is going to come to an end is God is going to take the nation Israel, make them an exceeding great army, and destroy those guys and settle the issue once and for all. Go back with me to the book of Obadiah. Obadiah, verse number 3. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee. Thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, who saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. And all those things in verse 3 about the pride of their heart that said they dwell in the cleft of the rocks. They dwell in an impregnable position that can't be taken down. That say in their heart, nobody can take us down. That exalt themselves like the eagle, soaring to the heavens, make themselves positions in the heavens. All those things are real, but when you notice them, you notice that they're actual things. I mean, the Edomites lived in the mountains and all that stuff, Mount Seir and all that business. But when you read those things, you know, there's something more than just the literal meaning there. Because when he talks to uses verse 4, he says, "Thou shalt exalt thyself as the eagle." Okay, that's a metaphor. That's a figure of speech. Thou shalt set thyself thy nest among the stars. That's another figure of speech. Who are stars? What do stars represent in the Bible? Angels, right? These are guys that are. What you do here is you have a bunch of religious terminology. Thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock. You remember Exodus 33 when Moses, he wants to see God, and God says, you can't see me. But he hid him in the cleft of the rock and then let him see his back parts. It's a place of divine protection and caring, where he's under that umbrella of divine protection. And it's a phrase. We actually have a song. Brother Mel's favorite song talked about and the cleft being hidden in the cleft of the rock. All of a sudden, it's time to quit. I'm going to stop. But I go through that just to say to you, when you read verse 3 and verse 4, you begin to see part of the thing that they used to deceive Edom, their associates. They deceived the Palestinians into thinking that there is a religious endorsement of their behavior that causes them to have a religious right to destroy Israel and take the land. All of those Arab nations in Psalm 83, every one of them have a common religion: Islam. All of the Islam is the embodiment of that ancient hatred that goes back to Ishmael. Now, if you've ever wondered what's going to happen to all of that, well, we'll see next time in Obadiah. Okay? You read those things, look over them, and next time we'll go through verse 3 and 4 a little more carefully next time, and talk about how you can understand some of those things specifically about what they are. Look at some cross references and just kind of help you with that, and then talk about, because there are clear passages in the minor prophets, in the prophets, that tell you how God is going to solve the Palestinian problem, how he's going to destroy, frankly, the Palestinians and the Islamic assault against Israel, that ancient hatred, and set it to rest. And the details of it, Obadiah, and really that's why Obadiah is set out as one separate book, is because the Edomites are the tip of the spear that the satanic policy of evil is using to destroy Israel, and consequently when God destroys them, he destroys the whole thing. Okay? All right. Went over a little over time, but that's okay. Joanna and Nick had Nick's dad's funeral yesterday. Got to enjoy some religion. And I know they appreciate your prayers for the opportunity to give testimony to those kind of things. I'll be leaving in the morning to go to California. The meeting next weekend out in Southern California, Brother John Verstegen and the saints there in San Juan Capistrano. We'll have people coming from all of the southeastern part of the southwestern part of the country. But pray for those meetings. I'm not going to go kayaking this time. My wife is going with me. And so I've already had to tell John and Berta that I can't go kayaking. I had the invitation and so forth, and I was ready to accept it. And then Cynthia said, I'm going. So I guess I'll be going to San Diego or something. Probably going shopping instead of kayaking, but you know how that goes. Father, we thank you tonight for your goodness. We thank you for your love and for the surety of your word. We praise you for it in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, thank you.